Welcome to the Everything Coworking podcast. This is your host, Jamie Russo. Thank you for joining me today. I'm so glad to be here. And I am also really excited to share that our Q1 2026 planning session is Thursday, December 11th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. If you joined us last year, you know it was both fun and productive. It's about 90 minutes for the group call. We will be doing some follow-up sessions. It's about 90 minutes for the group call. We're going to get a lot done in that 90 minutes. We have a framework that we go through, exercises that you do. It's a workshop. It's a lot of things. It's fun, it's community-based, it's accountability, and it's productive. So you're going to get this on your calendar and you're going to commit to it. You might do a little homework ahead of time, but show up and we'll give you the tools and the accountability to spend 90 minutes working on your business instead of in your business. If you're like most entrepreneurs, this is an ongoing challenge, and we're not always great at working on our business, which is why we have to carve out these times, especially when we're getting towards the end of the year. It's time to plan for 2026. It is right around the corner. And I would encourage you, if you have some time over, if you're in the US, we have an upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. You might be traveling, you might be visiting family, but maybe try to carve out a little bit of just brain time to start thinking about what's on your mind for 2026. What do you want to do in your business and in your personal life? We will have a little bit of time where we spend time on personal goals. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to the episode that we did about planning last year at this time. I don't want to repeat the whole thing. It's a good episode. It talks about the framework that we're using. It walks through the framework to give you a sense of how it works. And you can buy the book if you're watching on YouTube. It's called The 12-Week Year by Brian Moran. It's really common sense, straightforward. And yet, like many things that are straightforward, sometimes we don't think of these things on our own. As entrepreneurs, it's really hard to plan. I mean, his argument is nobody should plan a whole year ahead, but you never know what's going to come up. And also, we're always doing a lot of testing, right? Testing what works, and we have the ability to move quickly and change things when we need to. We probably change things even when we don't need to. I know I tend to do that. So the 12-week year is a great framework because the whole concept is that you, of course, have a longer term vision, and you have annual goals that you'd like to accomplish, but you're not going to lay out your whole year at once because from a mindset perspective, we tend to then sort of downplay when the things we do on a daily basis or a weekly basis, which means we're off track for the whole year. And that tends to be a challenge. Or we assume we can kind of make it up as we go along if we're behind, which is, as we know, much harder to do in reality than we think it is. So the 12-week plan creates flexibility, but also real urgency so that you really feel like the 12 weeks is your year. They talk about exactly this time of year that we're experiencing right now, where we feel like, okay, we had some goals for the end of the year. We're not quite there. It's go time. And you hustle and you're like running on, 2.5x speed to get everything done and all hands on deck. And you're really intense and you're, doing all the things to get, to where you want to be by the end of the year. And you cannot make up for lost time, but it's a really productive few weeks. So his point is we should kind of always operate like that while planning for vacations, etc., which is also really important. I know I have this challenge. I'll have family vacations or I'll have a whole week where I'm out for a conference. And I don't do a great job accounting for that because then you have all sorts of backup of things that don't get done or actions that don't get taken, especially when we have really lean teams, right? I like to be super realistic about what we can really get done with a lean team. And actually, I should say, I'm not actually that realistic, but I want to for your sake, be realistic and make sure we're thinking about the fact that, hey, when we're out of the office, there are things that are not going to move forward because we own a lot of what happens in our business. Or that's one of the things we can work on in terms of delegating. But if you have a lean team, you have to be realistic that when someone on your team, you or someone else, is out of the office, less gets done. And you can't necessarily just go replace that capacity for a short period of time. So, in the show notes, you'll find an episode from last year at this time, which is still very much relevant, about the planning process and things to think about. I, of course, do not like to be repetitive. So, for my sake and your sake, I just want to talk about what I'm thinking about heading into 2026 that might be a little bit different from last year, just to kind of overlay on the process. So, again, get yourself signed up, everythingcoworking.com/quarterly for the workshop. We're running it to register. Okay, so if you're already paying us, if you're in one of our programs, then it's free. So do not buy it. So then we have to refund it, which takes, time and resources. So don't pay if you're already paying us for something. Even if you're paying for your community manager, you're invited. So if you're paying us for anything, you are invited. And if you're paying us for your community manager will also get invited. If you are not, it's $7 until the Cyber Monday, and then it goes up to $47. And we have some excitement this year around it. We're going to have a pop-up group on our new community platform, and you're going to have a month in there to hang out, talk about Q1 planning. The replay is going to be in there, and we're going to have a custom GPT that will be an amazing tool for you to use to plan using this framework. And it's also fun because that 90 minutes goes really fast. And part of the excitement of the 90 minutes is you get to see what are other operators working on, et cetera. So this pop-up group will give you the opportunity to do that. So once you register, you'll get the invitation to the pop-up group. And we'd love to see you join us in there. So lots of exciting things going around Q1 planning for 2026. Okay, so here are a few things, not really in a particular order, around 2026 planning. Okay, my first one, which I do think is kind of a bigger theme, I have been thinking a lot about radical responsiveness. And in 2026, when I am working with clients and even in my own business, I'm thinking about what that looks like and how to become more responsive. There are certain industries where it's no big deal if you're not super responsive. Yes, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, we're going out of town and I have a dog sitter. I have 2 dogs and one of them just doesn't do well in doggy daycare. So we have to have somebody dog sit. And I realized one of them is almost out of food. And so I went into the website and the button to change the auto ship date wasn't working. So I waited, I tried it again, it wasn't working. So I sent them an email, no one responded, which is frustrating. But my auto ship is going to happen tomorrow, so it'll be a little bit late. Now the dog sitter has to deal with this giant bag of dog food that weighs a ton. So I feel bad, but it's fine. And I was like, oh, they never got back to me. Okay, fine. We have a cabin in Truckee, and we've been thinking for a long time about making it a short-term rental. I've talked about this in the podcast, and I keep dragging my feet for various reasons, mostly because I'm not there full time. So I finally said, okay, I am going to find a management company, and this year I'm going to make this happen. And I'm totally in the Q4 mindset of I'm getting this done right now. So I went into ChatGPT and I used the agent mode and I said, find me 3 independent co-hosting operators that are local. I don't want one of the big ones that's super sterile, etc. And then I asked it to find me reviews on these 3 options. And then I reached out to all of them. And all 3 of them responded instantaneously. And it was them, it was not AI, which means I send this in the evening? It was late. It was not during business hours for sure. And you have lots of personal examples around this topic, right? Around I am doing something outside of business hours because I have a to-do list And I cannot, manage all of my to-do list within business hours because life and kids and dogs and et cetera and work. So this was something that was on my to-do list. It's not getting done during the day. All three options responded immediately, and they were real humans. It would have been totally fine with me if it was an AI assistant, but they were real humans. And they answered my quick, inquiry and said, yes, when can we talk? And then I only responded to one of them right away, I think. The other two, I just didn't. And Monday, I have all my internal calls. So they followed up with me. Like just they're managing their flow. And so it's really important when you're trying to get something done, right away, they responded and I was in the mode to respond back. I booked calls with two of them already and we're off and running. So sometimes radical responsiveness is really important. And co-working is one of those examples. We'll give you a small example that I've seen and I know because of all the operators I talked to in our membership. So we just launched a new operator membership, a couple of different versions, which of course we'll share more about that on our Q&A planning call. But we've been talking about FlexSpace.ai and how does it make any sense that it is helping operators in pretty small markets? This comes to as a surprise to me. And, those operators were just like, you know what? I'm not sure it's totally logical, but when it's hard to accomplish something and it takes time and they want to do it right then, or it makes them create an account or whatever, they don't do it. They find, they either just drop it or find some other solution. And now that they can use this platform that is like instantaneously lets them book whatever they want with pretty much no friction, they're seeing more bookings. So this stuff really matters in our industry. Lead response time, I've done podcasts about this, matters a lot. So anyway, this podcast is not about radical responsiveness, but it's about themes. And so as I'm planning for 2026, I'm thinking about like, what's a big theme that I want to tackle that I think is important to my business and to all of the co-working space operators and community managers that we work with. And I think that's radical responsiveness. So if you don't have the processes and technology in place to be responding to leads ASAP, even if you're in a smaller market, and maybe we'll do some case studies on some of this in case you're doubting that this matters. I can tell you anecdotally and with the data that FlexSpace has, and I have no affiliation with FlexSpace. I'm just mentioning that because it's a common platform. And that's where I, have seen the data from. It matters and it's a big theme. And so I would consider having that as one of your themes for 2026 if that's an area of weakness. And for most of you, it is because I know most operators are not responding to leads instantaneously. Some of you have technology in place to do that, but many of you don't. So I would think about big themes that matter, and it might not be that one. So I don't have to tell you what your themes are. Yours might be hospitality, or it might be member experience, or, some big theme like that. But my next thought, sort of, it's not really a theme, but something to overlay on your planning, is to think about the outcomes that you want, not just strategies or tactics. So, like the radical responsiveness, that is a big theme. What does that mean? What is the outcome that I want? Like a big outcome could just be I want to convert more leads that come into my sales funnel. So I want my lead conversion, my lead to sale conversion to go from 3% to 15%. So then, you're going to use your 12-week planning process, 12-week year planning process to identify, okay, what are the things that we need to do to get that outcome? But an opposite example would be, I want to be more responsive to leads. That is like a theme, not an outcome. Or I want to update my website. I know I'm guilty of saying things like that. I need a website update, which is always, right? Instead of saying that, which is just very generic and it's not tied to an outcome, think in terms of outcomes. I need a website that converts at 3%. And I'm going to make these updates to get that done. And that's certainly part of our framework. But I think even when we're thinking sort of to ourselves, be focused on even trying to think more in outcomes versus these sort of generic things that people in business tend to think about. So plan for outcomes. And absolutely, that is part of the goal setting process. You're setting SMART goals. It's specific and measurable, et cetera. And so there will be outcomes tied to that. Okay, be realistic about what projects and KPIs you can accomplish and delegate. So as an owner, I think we have a lot of energy this time of year. Possibly, I know I do, about like working on the business and not in the business. And in 2026, I'm going to, just sort of have all these systems in place so that my team can do a lot of things. And that's not true for me because I do a lot of hands-on coaching in my programs, et cetera. But it is a mindset that I get into, like, okay, I'm doing too much. How do I delegate? I would be careful when you're thinking about this and planning, and in terms of your time management and how much you can get done in a year. A big bucket I see that is a gap and an opportunity for most operators is better lead management. And that means sitting down with your team and going through leads at least once a week in painful detail and making sure that your sales process is being followed, that your lead management process is being followed. It is not something I would delegate wholesale to your team because there will be gaps and you will not see them until it's too late. So I see, especially like landlords who have operators in place or general managers. I'm not saying don't trust your team, but what I do see is like there are almost always gaps if you don't have your pulse like directly on processes like that. So just think about, as you're thinking ahead to next year, one of them might be, oh, I need to hire somebody else or I need to outsource this. Just be careful about what that is. Keep the critical sales related aspects of your business very close to you. Okay, and then my last one is leave some R&D time. This is a time of intense change in terms of technology, AI, and it's totally fine if you're not on board with AI. I work with some operators who just are not comfortable and don't want to participate yet. That's totally fine. I am fully in the boat of using it to automate as much as possible. I also ask it about 100 questions every single day. So, but what I find that I struggle with is time to really learn it. I think this is a huge shift that if you, again, totally fine if you want to, skip to the next session if you're anti-AI, that's fine. But for those who are interested and excited and want to make sure they, kind of stay ahead of the game, we have to carve out the time to do that. And I know I'm an Enneagram 3. You guys know this if you've been listening for a while. We are all action all the time. So it's very hard for me to carve out time to just like sit and learn and think and identify, like, how am I going to integrate this into my business? I certainly do it, but it's more on the fly. And I find when I do things, there's a platform that I'm using called relay.app. And it is like Zapier on steroids. I won't go into what it does. Take a look at it. And I am trying to, when they host workshops, do some of them. So maybe once a week, once every other week. They are posted on YouTube oftentimes. I'm never going back to those. If I tell myself, oh, I'll just, do this and go back to them. So I'm trying to sign up for them real time when I can. But on top of that, like picking like R&D slot, like maybe it's Friday morning and you go to a coffee shop and you just like close the email and really focus on what do I want to understand and get better at. In our industry, maybe that's AI, maybe it's hospitality, maybe it's sales skills, like maybe it's something that you want to get better at, you want your team to get better at, and you need some time to study it. And with lean teams and just kind of always more to do, it can be hard to do that. But I think this is a time when there's so much change that you should. And that R&D time might be being a part of a program that kind of forces that. So I'm part of an AI membership, although nothing is required, of course. So I have to force myself to like put the calls in the calendar, show up, listen to the recordings when I can't. It might be joining one of our programs, which is obviously a great opportunity, and sort of forced R&D time. Like, what's your project going to be? Our Profit Accelerator is our new small group program for operators who want to pick something that they're focused on for the next 6 months, and they want the accountability and they want the weekly call, because we're going to bug you if you don't show up to the call and if you're not working on your project. And we're going to support you through the process, and we're going to help you keep taking the next step. We're going to coach you where you need coaching. We're going to give you access to other operators so you can see what everybody else is up to. So it builds momentum and accountability. And it could be, hey, it's my R&D time for the next month. I'm going to focus on this, or 6 months, or whatever the time frame makes sense. We do require a 6-month membership for that one, because we want people to come in who are actually committed to accomplishing something specific in the 6-month. Our other operator membership is $97 a month, and it's totally flexible. You can come in and not get overly committed to it. And I just want to mention too, we actually just updated that for those of you who are operators and have a community manager. We have a new bundle, which is $144. So that saves you $50 from buying separately the operator and separately the community manager membership. So that is a new bundle. We'll put all the links in here. I just want to be mentioning these programs because I think it is useful this time of year when you're thinking about what resources you need. Some of these may be applicable. So R&D time, lots of things are changing. Technology, even, things in technology in our industry. One of our community managers mentioned, they're moving to HubSpot because HubSpot integrates with this and it integrates with this, and they really want the integration. The challenge with HubSpot for independent operators, and raise your hand if you've been here, is that the $15 a month gets you almost nothing. So it's very, very basic functionality, and almost immediately you're going to be paying more in order to get the actual functionality you need, which from what I've seen is generally like $600 a month to get automations and like true CRM functionality, which is way too much for an independent operator with 1 or 2 locations. If you have multiple locations, then HubSpot can make sense. So, but I think the minds, I'm just using this as an example because the community manager is like, well, we need these integrations. Well, you don't. Today, with all of the platforms, Relay.app is a great example. Zapier does more than ever. You don't need direct integrations to get the things done that you want to get done most of the time. You can get pretty much any app to talk to any other app and trade data back and forth. It's pretty straightforward. Syncaroo solves some of the more complex, like when you need an API that doesn't exist. So certainly, there are solutions that are paid solutions that can help with that. But there are a lot of apps. I mean, Zapier is not free, but it's really inexpensive for what you get out of the platform. So it's just a lot of things are changing. So we want to stay on top of the things that are changing and things that you can automate, which, can free up your team to spend more time with your members and work on member retention or work on sales skills, et cetera. So just to recap, here are some of the things I'm thinking about for 2026. Consider having a theme. Radical responsiveness is one that I'm working on with a number of clients. Plan for outcomes, not strategies or tactics. And usually if you're using some sort of planning framework, that's going to force you into it. But even just when you're thinking to yourself about what you want to accomplish, be realistic about what you can delegate as you're thinking about adding things to your team. You need to stay really tight to things that drive revenue. Leave yourself some R&D time. So if you want to grow professionally as a human in your business, make sure that you have some time to learn and explore, because today's technology really requires that. You can sort of do some things on the fly, but you really need some brain time to really understand the landscape and what's happening out there. So those are my thoughts as we head into 2026 planning. everythingcoworking.com/quarterly will give you all the details to enroll in our planning session. And remember, when you enroll, you're going to join our pop-up community where we're going to be talking about 2026 planning. We're going to talk about lots of other topics as well that are relevant to operators. And that's where you'll access the replay. And we're going to have a planning GPT that's specific to co-working. So if you are into AI and using it, you're going to have access to that to make this super simple this year. So we hope that you can join us. That's December 11th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there.